Welcome to Alberta Conservation Association's Harvest Your Own podcast, the resource for everything hunting, navigating through the field, the butcher shop, and the kitchen. Life is all about great food. Let's get started.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Brad Fenson, an avid outdoor enthusiast who has worked as a freelance journalist, photographer, and public speaker for over 3 decades. I have hunted, fished, and foraged all my life and hope to share my passion for the outdoors. Along the way, I want to encourage everyone to harvest wild proteins and enjoy the satisfaction of providing the next meal for your family. Our goal is to educate, entertain, and inspire individuals to get outdoors and create a connection between food, health, and your future meals. Welcome to Harvest Your Own. Today we have an interesting crew for an episode about communicating with deer. We have the communication team from Alberta Conservation Association. We'll start off with Tara Holmwood. She's the manager of the, call them a team, a crew, the pit
All
boss.
Things, yep.
What do you do, Tara?
As you had mentioned, I'm the communications manager. So we have a team of 6 in total, including 1 contractor. And we help plan events, we get publications out, we communicate with our stakeholders and the public.
Very good. And Cassandra Hewitt, I believe you're called a social media coordinator.
I am. I'm everything digital, basically. So if you're on an app, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, you've probably seen some of my handiwork.
Absolutely. And that's a very important medium for contacting people nowadays of, we'll call it almost any generation. They're on there somewhere.
Yep. Pretty much anybody, anywhere, and goes all across the world.
Right. And Amanda Gill.
Hello.
Another communication coordinator.
That's right.
Yes. What is a coordinator?
A coordinator is somebody who makes sure that the team is on schedule and on time, making sure that all of our projects are ongoing and making sure that everything's working properly. And we also make sure that all of our customer-facing things, so our websites and our reporting that we send out is also up to speed and looking good.
Yes, I'm very familiar with the coordinator position as I get polite emails telling me that I have something due within a few days. So yes. It's always good.
Yep, keeping everybody on schedule.
Work as a team, absolutely. Tell us a little bit about Harvest Your Own. Harvest Your Own is an Alberta Conservation Association program. We have a podcast. There's a library of resources online. There's recipes. There's so much information that anyone wanting to start hunting could go on there and probably spend a month reading and looking at videos.
Yeah, so Harvest Your Own actually started a few years ago. We were looking to reach out to non-hunters to give them a resource for hunting. So it started out with some recipes and how-tos, and it has grown substantially.
Yeah, I'd say that.
Since I think it started in about 2018, that was the inception of it, and I think the website actually got rolling pretty good in 2019, so it took about a year to get it going.
Yeah, lots of interest, lots of pickup. Of course, I get lots of feedback because I've been a part of Harvest Your Own since the beginning, and I get to host this wonderful podcast. So I was kind of surprised when you came to me and said, we'd like to do a podcast, the 3 of us, and we want to do grunting deer.
Yes. Yeah. So it started out as an example of how we use some jargon without even realizing that we're using jargon, that I didn't even know what grunting for deer was. And I've been involved with Harvest Your Own for a number of years. And it was just an idea between the 2 of us to maybe we should talk about it. What does grunting for deer mean?
Amanda, do you have a hunting background at all?
That is a no.
That is a no. But it's nice that you can read and see and meet people that are involved in it and understand it.
Yeah, I think it's really important, even if you are not a hunter, that you understand what hunting is and what it means for Alberta and for conservation and how important it is to understand the aspects of it. Because if you're looking at it from maybe a negative standpoint, because sometimes the media or other people put it in a negative light, then you kind of get that idea in your head that it's not good, but it is. So
yeah, very well said. What does grunting deer mean to you, just out of the blue?
I have no idea.
Cassandra, we followed your journey in Conservation Magazine. We've had you on the podcast. again, not a big hunting background, but man, you've embraced it. You've taken it on. You've done well. You're shooting guns and bows and eating wild game, and I'd say you've taken Harvest Your Own and put it to work.
I have definitely, jumped in 2 feet. When I first started with ACA, I kind of went, all right, what can I do to understand this more? I'm not somebody who likes to just be handed something. I like to know why. And probably to some of the teams, we'll say annoyance of the constant, but why? So getting into hunting was my understanding of why. What is it? Why promote it? Why do we do it? Why is it beneficial for us consuming, for habitats, for the wildlife population, all of the sorts.
You did your first deer hunts last year.
I attempted them.
Well, no, you did. You went on your hunts, and every time you go out, you learn something. And that's, it's also an important message, because we are not always successful every time we go out or the first time we go out, but every time we go in the field, we have an opportunity to learn and have the animals teach us something as well. So what does grunting deer mean to you?
Well, on my hunts, no one actually did anything to call in deer. So I know grunting for deer is calling for them. And there's different calls that you can do to get different results, just like you would on a goose hunt. But every time I think of grunting for deer, all I can think about is this one scene from a movie. Some people remember it as The Princess Diaries, the first one, where I guess he was a hairstylist or makeover artist or whatever, pulls the cards for Anne Hathaway, and she goes, but I look like a moose. And he goes, but a cute moose. Make all boy moose go, wah.
Well, there you go. And I wonder if a bunch of listeners right now aren't listening and saying, yeah, that's pretty much grunting deer to me too. But, to go along the lines of Harvest Your Own, we like to explain things and dive deeper into it. Have an understanding, know what it is. And I like to say that we can communicate with most animals. You mentioned ducks and geese, we call them. They're very social, they're very interactive. Deer are as well, but I'd have to temper it. I'd have to say that deer vocalize a lot, but they are like the ultimate spring-loaded prey species. Everything they do is to survive. We often say animals have a fight or flight response. A whitetail, it's always easy. Theirs is flight. They're not going to stick around and fight. They don't even take a second to think about it. They're spring-loaded and off they go. So being able to talk to them is important, and understanding how they live and operate is an advantage, because we can use it as their weakness as well. So we can explore talking to deer a little bit and talk about animal communication in general. Whitetails and things like moose, they use their antlers to communicate, not only with sounds, but visually. The males often stand up proud and move their heads back and forth and display. And that's all communications within their lives. And we don't always understand it, but if we take the time to try to understand it, it takes us to a new level as a hunter. It gives us something in our toolbox to work with when the days are slow and we can't get the results we want. So you hunted last year. Did you see any deer?
I saw plenty of deer, but either it wasn't the tag that I had for the area.
Yep.
So one of my last hunts with Todd Zimmerling, we were going for whitetail. Well, I saw mule deer, so not much I can do there. And then when I was down south with Ahia for Oyen, I saw plenty of deer, but I made the choice that I wasn't separating any does and fawns. So I mostly just observed.
By chance, did you hear any deer blow at you, where they smelt you, saw you, heard you?
We weren't close enough. I would say the closest I managed to get was maybe 200 yards, and she didn't even care.
Right.
She was just watching and going, okay, you're there. Good luck.
Well, here's something to listen for, because you'll find it. Deer seem to have keen senses, whether it's hearing, smelling, seeing. And when they can't quite figure out what you are, they clear their nasal passages to get a really good smell, and they blow. They shh, and you can hear it. It's loud. It makes you stop, and it's alarming to you. You normally have about 2 to 3 seconds, and then you're going to hear it running away or see that white flag waving at you. But there's ways to keep the deer there for a second longer, especially now that they've given away their location. You can hear them, sometimes see them, and you have a little bit of time to respond. When they blow, they're trying to put two of their senses together. So they might see you, but they can't smell you, or they can hear you, but they can't smell you. So they're trying to put those two together. If they put 2 or 3 senses together, they're out of there. They know it's danger. So they're on alert. They're paying attention. They clear their nasal passages so they can smell better, and you hear that whoosh. If you blow back at them instantly, they're often like, oh, it's another deer. Oh, I heard something walking in the trees. You know, I'm trying to think like a deer does, even though it gets weird. They hear something walking in the trees, and they hear that blow. So just one tool in the toolbox is you hear a deer blow at you, you can be alarmed, take 1 second, and snort, sound just like they do, and blow right back at them.
So is that with all ungulates or just with deer?
It's not with all ungulates. More will do that, but it's primarily whitetails. Mule deer will as well, and I've heard elk do similar things, and it sounds a little different. But like I said, the whitetail is the ultimate in the fight or flight response, and theirs is definitely flight, so they're always on guard. You know, they're, like I say, they're spring-loaded, and that's what they're doing, is just trying to get the most out of their senses to understand what their danger is. So that's interesting. The blowing, you will hear that. As a seasoned hunter, I hear it annually. I know what it means, and sometimes I can buy a few seconds by doing it right back at the deer.
This podcast is produced for Harvest Your Own, a program dedicated to those who want to reconnect with food and health through their experiences outdoors. HarvestYourOwn.ca is a resource for individuals to learn more about hunting and the outdoors. There's information to get you started and ensure that your compass stays pointed in the right direction to be successful. Where's your next meal coming from?
Blowing and snorting is one way. Deer put together senses, we talked about that. Let's talk about the actual deer grunt.
Okay,
we're down to the meat and potatoes.
Let's get into it.
Yeah, so it's mostly the bucks that grunt, and they have 2 types of grunt. One is more just a vocalization, communication amongst other deer, and one of them is an aggressive rutting behavior where they're, you know, chasing a doe and often warding off other bucks. So, you know, it's pretty standard, and it is definitely a grunt. If you've ever been in a farmyard, you might have heard animals make similar noises, but I see some laughter around the table. Is that what you expected?
No, that sounds like a toad or a frog or something to me.
You know, it's often, I've had people describe it as, if you weren't aware of what a deer grunt is, it might sound like a really soft pig grunt. Mm. So, and that's, you know, again, understanding deer is a big part of it. They're not going to be like an elk where they scream and you can hear them from a mile and a half away. A deer doesn't want to be found. So I remember the first time I heard a deer grunt in the forest, I was probably 60 or 70 yards from them, and I hear this little beep, beep, and I'm like, what is that? I'm looking around for a sheep or something out there, and there's not. It's the deer. And it's like, holy, I expected way more noise out of that deer than that. So when deer do communicate, it is very subtle. You got to be close. You got to be paying attention. And if you think you heard something, you better just pause and really pay attention. Otherwise, you're going to miss it.
So do the females have a response to that?
They do. The females can grunt as well, but they tend to communicate more with their fawns, and it would be more of a bleat. But, you know, that gentle grunt. But when they get aggressive and they're rutting, I remember the first time I was hunting the eastern parkland of Alberta with a friend. I was a young hunter. You know, I'd shot a few deer, not a lot of success, but had some. But I bought my first deer call. It was a big investment, pretty excited. You get out there to try to do some of this. And I was told if a buck is chasing a doe, he's going to sound aggressive, and it's more like a hoo-ah. So I took my call, and that's exactly what I did is. And lo and behold, my buddy and I each shot bucks that night. We had 5 of them run in at us. I swear they would have stampeded over top of us if they hadn't seen us a second too late. And we both shot deer. It was like a breakthrough that I was like, holy cow, I just found out the best thing there is in deer hunting. Of course, I've gone through entire seasons grunting at deer and never got a response. So you have to have a buck that's active and that they're rutting hard and that they have competition in the area. But if they do, that hoo-ah is pretty hard to beat.
So you had mentioned that you invested in your first call. How much would a call cost?
Oh, a deer call, I'm guessing you could get one as cheap as $15 and probably up to $40 or $50. There's different ones, like this particular one here has a collar on it that you can move, and it'll do a doe call, rutting buck, a mature buck, and a young buck. So you get different tones out of the call as you turn the collar on it, which changes the airflow into the reed. And of course, you have bevels on it to give it that throaty sound. A lot of these have bevels on them, as you can see. I'm holding up a bunch of different calls. There's so many on the market. There's called ballers and grunters and snort wheezes and all kinds of stuff, but we'll get into them. But that's some of the basics. And, it's never a bad thing to call, but I always say you want to do it after you've exhausted other ways of finding deer.
What about with your hands? Can you call with your hands?
Not that I'm aware of, other than rattling with antlers.
Oh, okay.
No, how would you call with hands? What do you think?
Oh, no, I was just wondering because you hear people like whistle with their hands and whatnot. I was wondering if there was some sort of call with your hands.
Not that I'm aware of, other than you can use some of the, like they look like a kid's toy that you turn upside down and get that airlock, and then it sounds like a farmyard animal. The Fisher-Price barn has one built into it, so when you open the door that it moves at you.
I think I have one in my living room right now.
Yeah, I could probably find one here in the girls' stash of toys as well. But, I say don't use them until you've worn out other things. Why do you think that would be?
Well, you wouldn't want to insult anybody.
Well, that's probably true. You got to be careful what you say nowadays. Amanda, do you have a reason?
I'm not sure. I'm assuming it's because maybe it can tell that it's not a real deer. Maybe it spooks them, or...
Yeah. That could be, but the reason you want to limit your calling or do it after you've exhausted other things is because you provide the location for the deer of where you are. And they're going to come in downwind, they're going to sneak in, they're going to try to see you, and their senses are really keen. So if they get downwind and smell you, the game's over. Or if they come to a rise and start looking, and they have an amazing ability to triangulate sound. Like they hear a sound and they're not coming to within 100-yard circle of where you are. They come to where your boot prints are. So when you've snuck into your area, you're hunting quiet, and you've put in some time and you haven't had a response, and you think maybe you're going to make a move, that would be the time to call and make you stay in one spot a little longer.
Is there a certain distance that you should be away from the deer when you do the call, or does it matter how far you are away from it?
Well, there's two different ways to use it. I often use a call when I think there's deer in the area and I want them to come out and expose themselves so I can see them, have a shot opportunity. And I think that's when most people do. The other reason you would use it is if you see deer, you can't sneak up or get closer to them, but you want to bring them closer as well. So sometimes you'll get on the edge of a field and the deer are out there 400 or 500 yards. Your shot limitation is maybe 150 or 200 yards, so you want to bring them across. You can try grunting at them like another buck that's chasing a doe in the woods, and sometimes a buck will turn and come over. Or a lot of times the does are curious too. They want to see what's going on, and it's that social media craze. They're trying to see what all the neighbors are doing, and they don't want to miss a post, so to speak. Does that make sense in terms of the social media world for deer? Maybe that's the way we could explain grunting deer.
Yeah, that works. Or, that nosy neighbor that just can't stay out of their window.
Yeah, so you play on a deer's weaknesses and senses and curiosity more than anything. So you sound like a deer, and when you say that it might be off-sounding, like people know two deer sound the same. I learned that when I was elk hunting too. I was hunting elk one time and I had a big bull bugle at us, and I'm like, that's got to be another hunter. That sounded absolutely terrible. 15 seconds later, he walked out and did it again. I'm like, ooh, that was an elk. So I learned a long time ago that they all sound different, and you really can't make bad noises. It's like hunting birds. When you're out there trying your goose call for the first time, it sounds a little squawky, but the birds recognize it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's calls that I've made into it that have completely given me a way of not being something. I've been told, the warning sound that a flock might give. Sure, I've mimicked that by accident when I meant to do something else.
The alarm call.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anything that's, any of your calls that you do that sound alarming are alarming to deer as well. So you always want to be quite calm and positive. And, when you're laughing, Tara, because it's trying to think like a deer no matter how weird it gets, right?
Yeah. Sorry. I thought that was really funny. Just be positive and everything will be just fine.
I think it's probably because if you want to almost give off a sense of calm so that the deer is curious and will come, because if you put something that's alarming into the call, then they will obviously flee. So
absolutely. And there are times to try alarmed. So we talk about does bleeding. There's different bleeding calls here. And, there's the... And that's a lower pitch, so it's more like a fawn. But if you had a fawn that was being attacked by a coyote... They get pretty aggressive. That one came right out of the call, but there's that's how they work. That can actually work to your favor too. Mama deers are pretty protective, and when one of their young is getting attacked, they'll often come to the rescue, especially mule deer. Like a doe mule deer is probably the best mom in the woods next to a cow moose, and when she hears one of their fawns within their herd, not even her own, calling for help, they come in flying. And it's a great technique to use for early season archery hunters that have an antlerless mule deer tag. So there's the calm communications. There's also times when you want to get a little bit more aggressive.
This podcast was made possible by Alberta Conservation Association and the Harvest Your Own community. If you're interested in harvesting your own food, there's a comprehensive collection of information. To gain insight and knowledge, head to the field, harvest your own protein, prepare it, and taste the results. HarvestYourOwn.ca is a library of information from getting started and geared up to processing, butchering, and cooking wild game to make the connection between health and food.
So I just have a bit of a spicy question for you. Is there anything considered unethical when it comes to grunting?
No, I've never heard of anything that's unethical other than, it's something you use to take advantage of the deer's senses, weaknesses, riding behavior, natural instincts, stuff like that, which I think is good tactics. It's, in some places they bait deer and bring them in with artificial stuff. This is old techniques, like First Nations people would have bleated at deer and called and done antler rattling, and it's age-old hunting technique that can help bear fruit, so to speak.
That's really great to hear because, some people would consider calling in a deer or maybe consider calling in a deer, unethical and just wanting the pursuit of the hunt and the challenge without actually using the tools and resources to call them in.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you call deer, it gives you a unique opportunity. Like I said, understanding whitetails and always remembering, I'm going to reiterate this, it's going to be a flight, not a fight response. And if they put two of their senses together, they're out of there immediately. If they put one together and they're leery, they're just going to turn around and disappear, not as quick, but they're still going to disappear. So, calling can bring them out of cover. And you got to keep those things in mind that they're going to come or try to get downwind. They don't always, if you set up in the right location and say, okay, I've got a big wide open field downwind of me, they're going to have to come out in the open and cross some area to get there. You can use that to your advantage, but know that they're going to, they're coming to look for you and they're looking right from where you're calling from. So it's important. Often when you're hunting with another person, it can be advantageous where they can get into cover and stay well hidden, and you can watch from the side, maybe 50 yards over to the side, keep an eye on the downwind, keep an eye on the deer trails. Being aware of your surroundings is also very important. You don't just want to jump out of your car and start calling because they're going to know you're there, right? They're going to peek through the trees. You're never going to see them. They're going to see the car. They're like, there's Elmer Fudd again. Amanda, what would you do if you were going to go out on your very first deer hunt and try to grunt a deer?
What would I do?
Yeah, how would you do it to make it an advantage?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Sorry.
Cassandra, how would you go about it?
I would definitely try to make sure I'm in an area that there are signs that a deer has been around, whether I have scouted that area and have seen that,
Yep.
or I'm walking and I can see that there are, deer trails, anything, any kind of rubbing on the trees, and then try to make sure I have enough cover behind me, but I have a good view in front, and then hopefully sit for a bit and they'll come on their own. And if not, if I had to attempt a call, hopefully do it properly.
Yeah, and like I said, you can't really do it wrong. Any sounds of grunting and stuff. Tara, how would you go about it?
I would bring you.
That's cheating.
Is it, or is it just smart?
Here's an interesting question. When you start to call a deer or try calling a deer, what do you think the frequency is? How much are you going to call in order to bring that deer to you?
I think it would depend on the call you're using. If you're, like you said, trying to make a distressed fawn, they're not going to quit after, one or two calls. So it depends what you're using.
Right. That's a good point. If you're grunting deer, as we'll get back to our title here, you would call like a progression of grunts over 20 or 30 seconds, and then you wouldn't call again for 30 minutes. Does that sound like something that would be easy to understand, or is that like, whoa, I'm shocked at that?
Yeah, I am very shocked at that. That seems like a long period of silence.
Yeah, it is, but deer aren't overly talkative. So when they do talk, they get the message out, and then they're either on the move and they're chasing a doe or somewhere. But again, they don't want to give away their presence to predators. So they don't talk a lot. So if you were to do it every 30 minutes, your interval is going to be whether there's a deer bedded down that can hear you. The second time he hears you, you might say, okay, something is going on over there. Or you've had new deer move into your range of hearing that pick it up. But you don't want to get on the call and call incessantly, because they're going to be like, ooh, that is not normal. That puts me on alert. So it's hard to understand those things. It's like when I first went and called moose, I had someone with lots of experience, and they were like, you call 3 or 4 balls like a cow moose calling, and then you're going to wait 30 minutes to an hour before you do it again. And of course, as a new hunter, I was sitting there looking at my watch like, when's 30 minutes up? When's 30 minutes up? When in fact, I should have just been focused on my area, because the call is out there. The animals can hear a tremendous distance. On a calm day in the winter when they've got cold air, a deer can hear you from a kilometer away, and they're going to come. Even though it's subtle calls and they're very low in tone to us, they are geared to pick those up. So overcalling is a big mistake.
That's a good tip.
There are a lot of weird calls too. Like deer don't just do grunts and bleats and bawling and distresses. Sometimes bucks will do what they call a snort wheeze. And it's, again, they clear their sinuses and take some really deep breaths in. And it's a combination of being actively involved in a rutting scenario, and also to try to intimidate other bucks. So if you've got a big buck in an area, and again, if you're set up against some bales and you got a big open field in front of you and some deer come out on the far end, and you're like, oh, he's never going to get over here before the end of light, you can try a snort wheeze, because that is, if he's an aggressive buck and he's one of the dominant bucks, he's got to come check it out. So it's they blow air out, and then they take 2 real big breaths in. It goes, and you can hear it from a long ways off. So Amanda, you look at me like, what was that?
I didn't even know you can make that kind of a sound with a device. That's very interesting.
Yeah. So, I wanted to sort of end with this one, because you talk about grunting deer. I feel like I got to put on my cutoffs and sort of look like I live in Tennessee in a trailer, and grunting deer, hunting deer, or whatever all these different acronyms are. And chasing deer, is that one of the guys on social media, chasing deer? Anyways, the different sounds all mean something. We can have a lot of fun with it, but they all have meaning. Using them in the right way gives us a huge advantage. And I think that's what Harvest Your Own is all about, is take a topic that is kind of fun, we don't understand, and turn it into something that, hey, I think that all makes sense. Does it make sense, Amanda?
Yeah, I think it's very, very interesting. I also just have a question. When you're out hunting, do you often take all of these different types of calls with you and like wear them around your neck and then just switch between? Or do you pick one specific one that you think will work for that type of hunt?
I'd have to say that over the years, I quit taking my grunt calls because I understand they're very low in tone, and I call with my voice.
Oh, interesting.
So, bleh, bleh. And the one thing that I'll say is the grunt call that I use most often is just out of complete curiosity to stop a deer in a shooting lane where I have a clear shot opportunity. So you've waited all day. Cassandra, you finally get out. You've got a nice whitetail buck. He's walking down the trail towards you, and he's going to go right through the clearing into the trees before you get a shot. What are you going to do?
Panic.
Yeah, okay. That's what most of us do on the first outing and the first opportunity. Heavy breathing, excitement, heart rate's up. Actually, if you just go, bleh, bleh, most of the time they're going to stop in their tracks and look right at you, which gives you the shot opportunity. Tara, this is fun, isn't it?
This is hilarious. I could just picture that's your go-to in any panic moment now is just start bleeding.
Find me in all our meetings.
Can you do that sound, Cassandra?
Can you?
I don't think so.
Oh, go ahead and try it.
Bleh.
Yeah. Now that sounds like a doe bleat. That would still stop him. If you were an aggressive buck, you need a bit more tone in your throat. Bleh, bleh, bleh.
Bleh.
Yeah. So, again,
You sound like a sheep.
I was gonna say it sounds more sheepish, but it makes me that's what they have a little bit of a similar call to a
Right.
sheep. So interesting. Okay.
some of the grunts can sound like a pig oink. Some of the bleats are more like a sheep bawing or bawling. So it does sound a lot like farmyard animals because they are animals.
Well, and they're probably all related in some form or another.
Yeah, there you go.
All the hoofed.
That's a science question. Terry, what did you learn today? Is grunt and deer just an acronym and another term that we don't really understand?
No, I think it's learning a new language. As I was discussing with Amanda yesterday, it's it's learning to communicate with another species. So yeah, it's a whole new language.
Yeah. Cassandra, is it going to help you this year if you get back out in the deer woods and try to put some venison in the freezer?
I think it's a good tool to have. Will I be the one to use it this year? That will be the question. I think this year, given that my first year was short and I didn't harvest, I would still go out with somebody who's more experienced and maybe leave more of those tools to them and hopefully harvest this year.
Right. I hope you do get one. And the one thing I would tell you is if you take one thing away from this and you got a deer opportunity where you hope that they stop and you got a standing shot, grunt at the deer to make them stop and you will be very pleased with yourself.
I'm going to start trying that every time I go on a hike and see something.
That's a great way to try it. If you're out there and you actually see a deer, the season's not on, just grunt at them and see what they do. They're going to stop and look at you.
I do the same thing. I after my first season last year for waterfowl, I went and I have a duck call and I have a goose call. So I'll go sit at the local pond just down the trail in the middle of Edmonton and see who's going to be of interest. And if they will come and look at me or if, they start swimming the other way.
Yeah. Best way to learn a call is to listen to the real thing doing it. Amanda, again, you don't come from a hunting background. You support hunting. You understand it. You have a big role in terms of communications with magazine articles, online content. What do you think a conversation like this will mean to somebody starting out deer hunting that listens to the Harvest Your Own podcast?
I think it's a great advantage to hear, a great advantage for hunting. So like you said, it really just kind of helps you bring in the deer if maybe it was a little bit further out. I think, trying to get as many tools as possible when you're first starting out is a great thing to have. I don't think a lot of people maybe know where to start when they're hunting. So this is a really small thing that can maybe give a good advantage and get a deer in for you to bring it in close for a shot. So
yeah, and every advantage adds up at the end of the season. You know, like we started off talking about a deer blowing at you, trying to smell, and then off they go in alarm, right? Try blowing back. You know, if a deer busts you, blow back at them, and they don't always stop, but lots of times they're going to stop and check you out again just because they had some doubt in their mind. So it's those little things that can make a big difference for you in the end. And, you know, that's what Harvest Your Own's all about, is adding tools to the toolbox. If you're a deer hunter or anything, want to pursue other big game, understanding how that animal communicates with others within their community is really big, and you can use it to your advantage. Any other questions or comments about grunting deer?
I have one very strange question, I think. Would a deer ever attack you for grunting in a wrong way?
Yeah, you know, I've never heard or seen of that. Sometimes they can come in real close, but when I look at a whitetail and think of that fight or flight response, the only time I ever see them have a fight response is with another buck or with a coyote or something. I can see them get aggressive. If they identify you as a human, it's usually game over. They have the octane turned on as they shift into fifth gear. So I don't think you're putting yourself at danger. You might have some close encounters, but they'll increase your heart rate and make you chuckle a little bit when it's all over, because your heart rate's going to go up too. Thanks for joining us today. You know, I want to say the communications team does an outstanding job. You guys are involved in so many things that makes my head spin. You know, Conservation Magazine is full of great articles. We've got the podcast. You put on special events from Kids Can Catch to you name it. You've got a huge social media presence. I'm sure there's not enough hours in a month to get everything done that's on your plate. So,
no, I'm still trying to catch up from vacation a couple weeks ago.
So I was going to say thanks for coming out and sharing a topic about grunting deer, because it's kind of a fun topic when you throw it out there, but there's a lot more meat and potatoes to it when you get right into the stew.
Well, thank you so much for having us. This has been really educational and exciting and fun.
Yeah, well, it's fun. We don't often get a chance to step back and look at things from a higher level and look at things from, you know, someone without any hunting experience, or even a hunter that's been doing it for years and maybe chuckled when somebody says grunting deer and didn't know what it means. Now they have a new tool in their back pocket, and you know what? If it helps somebody harvest a deer this year and put food on the table for their family, I think that's a win for everybody. So thanks for coming out. Check out Harvest Your Own online. Check out more of the episodes and podcasts, and we hope to have you back in our audience soon.
thank you.
Thanks.
We hope to inspire people to reconnect with nature and appreciate where your food comes from by harvesting your own. For more information on getting started or to learn specifics about the Field to Fork experience, visit harvestyourown.ca and follow on Facebook and Instagram. Check back often for new material, recipes, and videos that are posted regularly. Please subscribe to Harvest Your Own podcast and take the time to rate and review the show to help us build a dedicated core of passionate hunters as our regular audience. Until next time, embrace the outdoors and all it has to offer. Thanks for joining us.